Hey guys, it's Dr. Drake 63 here today. I want to thank you for joining me. It's 29 degrees today in Minnesota. It's January, and so yes, I'm in short sleeves. Some of you are going to say, what are you, nuts? But anybody who lives in the northern states, northern plains, understands that this is short sleeve weather for this part of the country. So anyway, I thought I'd shoot the intro portion of this video outside. This particular subject today is the Smith & Wesson, and this is the 5906. Now, you all have recently seen me cover the Smith & Wesson 6906, which is actually a smaller, more compact version of the 5906. So, you know, try to keep up on the nomenclature. These are Series 3 9mm full-size handguns in the case of the 5906, and we're going to compare it a little bit today to the 6906, which we reviewed recently, see which one we like better for shooting, if there's any differences, as well as just the fact that, hey, it's another cool gun that's very clean. It's not a police trade-in. It's not something that's been brought back with an import mark. It looks almost flawless in terms of its finish, just as the 6906 is, so that's pretty cool. I don't have the original box for this one, but it is most definitely a firearm that has not been touched much in its life. These were guns that were really big, so basically in the neighborhood of late 80s through late 90s. And then, of course, we know in come the Glocks, in the Smith world, the M&P series, polymers, you name it. But these guns are built like a tank. Today I ran about 150 rounds through this, did a lot of double tap, a lot of rapid fire, different kinds of things that if the gun's going to have any jamming issues, you're going to find out about it. And as I learned with the 6906, hollow point ammunition, plus P, all of that stuff, these firearms gobble them right up. So I'm going to talk about those differences a little bit today. Hope you enjoy this video. This is Dr. Drake 63. Let's check this out. So we're going to jump right into shooting. We've got the Soleil and Below 115 grain, as well as the Remington 115 grain. So a couple full metal jacket loads that we're going to shoot and compare, see if there's any difference. And I found these triggers to behave exactly the same. If you put a blindfold on me, I would not know which trigger was which based on both the double action pull and the single action pull. It is, again, a little bit farther towards the back of the trigger guard well than a Glock and a 1911, for example, so it takes a little getting used to, but once you do, the reset, everything is very predictable, very crisp, and it does a great job. So the trigger design on these, in my opinion, was done right from the get-go. So you can see first results. Here's the Soleil and Below. This is a 10-shot group at 21 feet or 7 yards. Here is the Remington. Again, a 10-shot group, same distance, not quite as good, but that's probably me and not the firearm. And here you see I'm using the 6906. We're going to use that Soleil and Below ammo, and we're going to use the top right circle, see how we can do compared to the 5906. I did find I like the sights better on the 6906. I do like the way the 5906 fills my hand a little bit better. And here you see we're hitting kind of low. So I'm using the same sight picture on both firearms, and that's your difference. So anyway, we decided let's go ahead and run one out here to 25 yards, see what kind of results we get. Nothing to write home about. I think I could definitely do better with some practice, but this is pretty typical. You can get nice groups at closer distances. I mentioned that I wasn't used to that decocker. Here you see me trying to shoot, and I had to stop myself and deactivate that to allow the gun to operate in a fire versus safe mode. But as you know from watching my videos, I'm a strong believer in practice how you think you might need to use the gun And I can tell you if I'm ever in a situation where I do need to use the gun, I'm going to be shooting it quickly. Okay, so got these two firearms side by side, the 5906 and the 6906. You're going to notice some differences right away. First of all, this has a square trigger guard, which was the older models of these third generation Smith & Wesson semi-auto loaders had the square trigger guard. You'll also notice that it's got more of kind of a plain Jane kind of sight configuration. And compared to the 6906, which this would be a little bit of a later model towards the end of the run, you're going to see that you have the Novesk sights. These give you a little bit better of a sight picture. And I would have to say that between the two, I prefer the 6906 sights. And but other than that, it's all pretty much the same. You've got a longer grip handle with this full size. They kind of compensated for that with these extensions off the magazines. So you see right here what I'm talking about. These originals came with stainless steel magazines, as you see right here, Holden 12. So they did a little cheat to kind of assist with that scenario. You see a lot of that nowadays. But in terms of just looking at this firearm, the other thing is we'll decock this. It does not have an exposed hammer. Here with this big boy right here, we're looking at a 15-round magazine. And these are durable. These aren't hard to get. The gentleman that I bought this one from only had one of these magazines. But I was able to go to a gun store with less than a 5-minute drive and was able to find this one, which is the exact same thing, about $35, which isn't bad. I mean, you're talking about something that's going to last forever. It's indestructible. So, but that's what we're really talking about. In terms of the barrel length on this is 4 inches. This very much feels like a 1911 in terms of the fit in hand. Not as slim in terms of the grip, because this is a double stack, and obviously the 1911 is not. 1911's got a little bit longer barrel, but this right here was a very typical police department firearm. If you go back to the late 80s, all through the 90s, before the polymers, the plastic Fantastics took over. But a couple other dimensions to look at. So this is the slide of the 5906, and this is the slide of a Glock 19, which is definitely thicker. Definitely thicker. Now, what the Glock 19 doesn't have is this ambidextrous decocker / safety, which I don't care for. They did make models without them. But, so this does actually end up adding quite a bit of width. You know, on an out of the waistband holster like a policeman would carry, not an issue. Carrying in the waistband, something like that, becomes an issue, and that's true for the 6906 as well. So just kind of comparing these two. The other thing, just want to really quickly point out, obviously modern 9mm almost all have some kind of weapons rail, okay? Some kind of place to mount a light, some kind of accessory. And that's handy, that's very practical. You don't have that with these old guys. What you have is hold the flashlight in one hand, hold the firearm in the other. There's some areas where that actually can be an advantage, especially if you're using this in the mode as opposed to directly what you're going at, to pop it up in the air in a room like what's called umbrella to get a more general light, okay? So it's not all a complete disadvantage, although I do think that these modern designs, obviously more practical, doesn't nullify what these guys can do. That's for sure. Dimensionally speaking, yes, you have a longer barrel on the left with that 5906 versus the 6906. Without a doubt. We already talked about the trigger guard, squared versus rounded. Not a real big difference to me. They both have that decocker, which is mounted on the slide. And what you're going to see is that the grip dimensions aren't as different as you'd think they'd be because of the finger extension on this one, because the magazine on the 5906 is flush mounted. Now, it's not to say you couldn't put some kind of extension on there, but you're really only talking in terms of the actual distance. You're really only talking about maybe 1/4 of an inch. Here is my hand holding the 5906. You can see where my pinky is. It comfortably fits on, but not with a lot of room. Okay, but this is about it. Okay, this is how my hand fits on the 6906. So again, on the edge there with that extension. I'm not a huge fan of pinky extensions, but it plays its purpose here. Definitely the 5906 is more comfortable in my hand, but for purposes of concealment, no question, I'd rather go the route of the 6906. You're only sacrificing 3 rounds. Okay, let's see if we can understand maybe one of the reasons why police forces went away from this firearm to the polymers. This is empty. There's nothing in the chamber. Take my word for that. There's no magazine inserted. So we're just weighing the firearm. And you can see that this comes in at 2 pounds, 2.6 ounces. So that is not a light 9mm pistol by any stretch. 2 pounds, 2.6 ounces. Part of the reason is this is all stainless steel frame and slide. Now we've got the next one up, which is our 6906. 1 pound, 7.65 ounces. Okay, so close to half a pound less, and it's not because of less barrel or a shorter grip. More than anything else, this frame is an alloy. Okay, so why did Glocks and M&Ps and SIGs become popular? Why? 1 pound, 5.6 ounces. Okay, so you're talking about the difference between 1.5 pounds or a 1 pound, 5 ounces versus 2 pounds, 2 ounces. It's a lot of weight. Both of these firearms, this is the Glock 19, both these firearms are 15+1. Now, a lot of law enforcement is going to actually carry the 17, which has more capacity, isn't that much bigger, but that's a lot of weight that adds up. Now, is it a deal breaker? Well, I guess it depends on how much stuff your law enforcement official is carrying on his belt besides this. The ammo weighs the same, so forth and so on. So, in terms of just lightweight, in terms of how flush and simple the design is, things getting caught up, coming in and out of the holster, things like that, hands down, Glock's a better design. But these serve the purpose very well, and they're not as flippy when you're doing rapid fire as a lighter firearm is going to be, without question. But the world went to striker fire. Every shot's the same. Single action, double action. That first one is a long pull. And then you go to where your trigger's about here, and you can reset very easily. These shoot very nice in rapid fire. I would say nicer than the Glock. But that first shot, which may be the one that matters, that big long trigger pull can be a problem. Now with this particular firearm, you could actually cock back and then you're shooting in single action. This has a magazine disconnect. Some of you may or may not like, so it's not going to shoot. The only way I'm going to get this back is to decock it. So you do have that option with the 5906. With the 6906, you don't. And the reason you don't is because the hammer is not exposed, which again is for, potentially in the waistband or a concealed mode. One less thing to have to worry about getting hung up. There may be a better way to do this, but from what I've seen, you basically need to insert a magazine. You can see that it's empty. You need to insert a magazine and then pull the trigger, just like a Glock. Your magazine release is right here. That comes out. And now, what I'm going to do is pull the slide back until this groove here is right above this portion of the takedown pin. So there you go. Comes right out. And there you go. With the stainless and everything, it does show its fair share of crud after you shoot 150 rounds through it. That's just life in the big city, right? If you want stainless, it's going to show. But here's your spring. As we discussed before, your guide rod is a solid piece of steel. Tilt barrel design comes right out. This one's kind of dirty. We'll clean that up, but thank you very much, John Browning, for giving us this masterpiece of a concept. And then, as you can see, ambidextrous decocker / safety. And you'll see during the shooting videos that I actually didn't realize I had this safety engaged, and I thought, well, what's the problem? Just because I'm not used to this kind of scenario. So anyway, but here's what it looks like. For a firearm that you can get as cheap as these, they're a really nice piece of engineering, really nice piece of manufacturing. As you can see, there's a really nice defined bore, and it cleans up very nicely. So these parts, not a lot to them. You've got your slide, you've got your barrel, you've got your frame, and between this and that Glock, I guarantee you this is where you really get your biggest difference in weight. As we mentioned, the guide rod, which is solid metal, your takedown pin and magazine. And that's about it. One nice thing about stainless, you know when you've got it clean. A lot of these come back with stampings somewhere along the slide, come back from Israel, whatever, or police trade-ins that show a lot of wear. They're going to function just as good as this example that's so clean, right? And I expect I'm going to put my share of marks on it. I've actually seen where guys have gone in and polished these to a high shine, which seems kind of cool, but then kind of doesn't seem cool. I'm not a glitzy gun guy, so I like to keep this close to its original configuration. I've seen some wooden grips, which look really neat. So nice aesthetic value, but I don't want to do anything to add to the diameter, the overall width, or any of that with this grip. It's pretty hefty as it is. I'm not going to be one of those guys that says, well, the police really screwed up when they went away from this and started going to stuff like the Glocks or the M&Ps. It's advancement. It's advancement, but aesthetically, is this a more attractive firearm than these Smith & Wessons? I don't think so. I don't think so. Very, very impressed with these, though. When I got this guy and reviewed it here a few weeks ago, the first thing that came to my mind is, man, I'd really like to have the full-size version of this. I went to some local gun shops. Usually these are available for under $4. This was the best specimen I saw. So there you have it. This is one fine, time-tested, reliable firearm. This thing doesn't even want to think about not cycling around. Doesn't matter if you're doing double taps, complete magazine dumps, whatever. You know, if you watch my videos, I'm a big believer in running these things pretty hard so you can find out if they're going to be able to do their job, if necessary, to save your hind end. So is this as accurate as a target pistol? I think our shooting results show no, it's not. It does a pretty good job. Like I said, I need to whiten up this front sight and make those more pronounced, or make sure I'm not shooting at targets that match the color of my front sight. That was a real taxing situation for my eyes. But anyway, like I said, it's a beautiful firearm. It's in great shape. Love the 6906. Love this 5906, guys. And I think you would too if you get an opportunity to pick one of these up, whether it's in pristine condition or whether it's got some wear and character. Either way, I don't think that you'll be disappointed at all. I've seen them online. I don't think you have to look too far to find one. And just a nice piece of Smith & Wesson history. This is Dr. Drake 63. I want to thank you for watching today. Carry on, guys.